Let's get this started. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome all guests and media. My name is Wilson Miao. I'm the Member of Parliament from Richmond Centre, and I'll be the MC for today's announcement. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are standing on the unceded and traditional territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nation. First, today is a very exciting day, because this announcement was already announced on the other side of Canada coast. And this is a very important announcement for my community, the riding of Richmond Centre, the estuary of the Fraser River and borders of the Pacific Ocean. And I'm very happy to be here today with all of our speakers. We have Duncan Wilson, Bridgitte Anderson, and of course, Minister Wilkinson. And today, we're here to witness a historic announcement that will make a difference for people, not just in my community, but Greater Vancouver and across Canada. Now, I'd like to pass this to Minister Wilkinson, Canada Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, to make the following announcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec vous. And I do want to thank the Port of Vancouver for hosting here today. And I want to thank them in particular for actually hosting in a place that actually overlooks my riding of North Vancouver. So it is certainly great to be here with folks from the Port as well as with representatives of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. I as well would like to just acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. We talk a lot about climate change these days for obvious reasons. Climate change is altering our world's natural environment in a myriad of different ways. But it is also rapidly transforming the global economy and global finance in ways that are creating enormous economic opportunities for those who approach the transition to a low-carbon future in a manner that is thoughtful, determined, and focused. The global energy transformation is already well underway in both. It is an environmental imperative, of course, to protect the planet for future generations, but it is also an economic opportunity on a scale similar to the Industrial Revolution. In releasing the World Energy Outlook 2023, Dr. Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, stated, and I quote, "The transition to clean energy is happening worldwide and it is unstoppable. It is not just a question of if, it is just a matter of how soon." Such opportunities are already increasingly being reflected in consumer and industrial behavior. Consider this. In 2020, 1 in 25 vehicles sold globally were zero-emission vehicles. That number jumped to 1 in 5 last year. That is amazing progress. The share of fossil fuels in electricity generation fell from 70% 10 years ago to 60% today, and it is projected to be 40% by 2030. More than 500 gigawatts of renewables generation capacity are set to be added in 2023, and more than $1 billion US per day is being spent simply on solar deployment. Going forward, the International Energy Agency projects that by 2030, almost half the world's electricity supply will come from renewables, and 80% of all new electricity capacity from now to 2030 will be renewable. 50% of US registrations for cars will be electric. Heat pumps and other electric heating systems will outsell fossil fuel boilers. And global demand for oil, gas, and coal will peak during this decade, even in a scenario where policies relating to climate change get no stronger, which I think is very unlikely. Certainly, one sector in which we need to see continuing progress going forward is maritime shipping, which underpins strong, secure, and resilient supply chains. Standing here at the Port of Vancouver, the busiest port in Canada and the most diversified port in North America, it is easy to see how important maritime shipping is to our economy. It is estimated that 80% of all goods are transported by sea, and this will continue into the low-carbon future. Batteries, components for electric vehicles and renewable energy sources, critical minerals, and a range of other things will be imported and exported through our maritime shipping corridors. Securing a prosperous future depends on ensuring that our ports, trade corridors, and infrastructure have the capacity to move products to market sustainably. And that is what brings us here today. Earlier today in Halifax, my colleague, Minister Rodriguez, announced the launch of the Green Shipping Corridors program, and I am excited to be able to highlight just how important this initiative is for British Columbia and for Canada as a whole. The program will invest $165 million over the next 7 years to help create green shipping corridors on Canada's west and east coasts and along the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway. This will support projects that will reduce emissions in the maritime sector and help us to reach our goal of net zero emissions by 2050. The program will have two specific funding streams relating to shore infrastructure and to low-emission vessels. The Clean Ports stream will invest in clean technology and infrastructure such as electrified port equipment, clean fuel infrastructure, and shore power, something I know the Port of Vancouver has already been working on, at coastal facilities across the country. This will lower emissions from port operations and create good jobs across the supply chain and within the facilities themselves. The Clean Vessel Demonstration Program will target the testing, demonstration, and deployment of large Canadian vessels using low-carbon or zero-emission fuels and technologies that will lower emissions and costs and increase the sustainability of supply chains globally. Today's announcement stems from the Clydebank Declaration that Canada signed along with 24 other countries at COP26, and I was fortunate to actually be there for that announcement. This program is a win-win-win. It will invest in crucial economic infrastructure that increases competitiveness, lowers costs, and create jobs. It will advance cleaner, more efficient transportation alternatives across our maritime supply chains, and it will lower emissions on our coasts, waterways, and in our communities. In building on this program, Minister Rodriguez today also announced the federal government is putting into place a national supply chain office with an investment of more than $27 million. National in scope and led by Robert Dick, the former Assistant Deputy Minister of Transport Canada here in the Pacific region, the office will work with private and public sector partners across all modes of transportation to increase efficiency and resiliency across our supply chain and reduce disruptions that cost our economy and consumers. The office will lead, gather, and coordinate input from governments and industry on national and international supply chain issues. It will support data sharing and new computer software to move goods faster and cheaper. And it will support smarter policy, regulatory, and investment decisions by government and certainly by industry. And finally, it will have responsibility for the development and implementation of a national supply chain strategy. The office will start by bringing together government and industry to identify priority issues in the supply chain and to find meaningful solutions. This is one part of a broad, comprehensive environmental and economic plan, one that is working to ensure Canada can and will thrive in a low-carbon future. And I would simply say that there is no economic plan for the future of Canada that does not acknowledge and build upon the reality of climate change and the reality that the world is moving to address that issue. As I said here earlier, the Port of Vancouver is a key part of our regional economy. Here and in facilities like this across the country, we are making investments to ensure that our critically important supply chains, the economic links that ensure affordable goods and products are delivered to markets and to Canadians, are as sustainable and as competitive as possible. So thank you very much for joining us today. I think this is a very important announcement for the future of the Canadian economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wilkinson. Next on the speaking list, of course, a very strong partner in emission reduction in the marine space. Without further ado, I'll invite Duncan Wilson, Vice President for Environment and External Affairs at the Port of Vancouver, to share a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilson, and thank you, Minister Wilkinson, for the announcement this morning. I'd also like to acknowledge with gratitude the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the Vancouver-Fraser Port Authority. I'd like to thank Minister Wilkinson and the Government of Canada for investing in and helping accelerate the development of green shipping corridors in Canada. It's fitting to have this announcement inside Canada Place, our cruise terminal, and also during COP28. Cruise has always been an important focus for us in terms of our work in decarbonization at the Port of Vancouver. When we installed shore power in this facility in 2009, this port became the first in Canada and the third in the world to offer that technology. And that technology has now reduced over 32,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. And this morning, as you can tell, we're also conserving energy and reducing emissions by not turning the heat on. At the Port Authority, we've set a goal to phase out all climate-related emissions and air quality-related emissions across the Port of Vancouver by 2050 in alignment with federal goals. We lead a suite of programs to support and enable the port industry on their path towards zero. For example, the Port Authority's Eco Action Program has been accelerating decarbonization and incentivizing cleaner and quieter ships for more than 15 years. The port's customers are at the forefront of climate action, and we've been very pleased to collaborate with them on a number of decarbonization projects. Seaspan has adopted the first battery electric terminal tractors at the port and 100% biofuel throughout their operations, following a collaboration with the province and the Port Authority. Viterra has adopted 100% renewable diesel in their locomotive fleet, following another collaboration with the port. And DP World is moving forward with the world's first hydrogen fuel cell-powered gantry crane at Centerm, the container terminal just to our east, using all BC-based technology through a collaboration with the province and the Port Authority. However, we recognize these successful collaborations are just the beginning. Transitioning a port that handles over $300 billion in cargo annually to net zero will require tremendous collaboration and investment, and so we all need to do more. The concept of green shipping corridors is all about increasing collaboration to advance climate action in ports and shipping. Last year, we joined leading cruise lines, the Port of Seattle, and the City and Borough of Juneau, Alaska, to launch the Pacific Northwest to Alaska Green Cruise Corridor, a collaborative initiative to advance the world's first zero-emission cruise corridor from Washington State through British Columbia to Alaska. We're also working with customers and industry leaders to support advancement of a green corridor to decarbonize the shipping of Canadian exports. These initiatives underscore industry's leadership and commitment to collaborating on climate action, and the Government of Canada's support for green corridors announced today creates opportunities to accelerate the scale of these efforts at this port and other ports across Canada. More broadly, this funding is a step towards advancing Canada's path to zero emissions. From a port perspective, alongside emissions reductions, these types of investments also support operational cost savings and the long-term competitiveness and resiliency of Canadian ports. We very much appreciate the federal government's focus on enabling green corridors, and we look forward to continuing collaboration with industry on advancing and to enable a strong, sustainable, and decarbonized future for this port and Canada's trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan, for your remarks. And our region is very blessed to have a strong and vibrant business community. And I will now invite Bridgitte Anderson, the CEO of Vancouver Board of Trade, to share a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson, and thank you, Minister. Addressing climate change is good for business. It is why the Port of Vancouver, Canada's largest port, has committed to becoming the most sustainable port in the world. This region moves as much goods as the next 5 largest ports combined, single-handedly accounting for approximately 25% of Canada's total traded goods. Initiatives like this one will help many of the companies that operate in our region do their part in helping Canada reach its goal of net zero emissions by 2050. The path to a cleaner, safer, and more prosperous future is through investments into our economy that ensures the business community is primed to be leaders in green technology. We are also pleased to see the announcement of the National Supply Chain Office and the appointment of local leader Robert Dick as the new head of the office. This is a very welcome move, and we look forward to engaging with the office. We look forward to continuing our work with all levels of government to help meet our climate targets and building a thriving and clean economy that works for both businesses and people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridgitte, for sharing your remarks. And this will conclude the speaking portion of the announcement. Next, I'll pass the floor to Gary Sher from Mr. Wilkinson's office to moderate the media Q&A. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gary. I'm from Minister Wilkinson's office. We'll now move on to the media Q&A section. When I call on you, please identify your name and the news outlets that you're with, and we will limit one question and one follow-up per each news outlet, please. Are there any questions on the floor at this moment? Oh, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Benoit Ferradini with CBC Radio Canada. A question for Minister Wilkinson. In English and French, if possible, please. So we are the cruise ship terminal. Are any of your measures announced today applicable to cruise ships? Because I guess they are responsible for a big part of the pollution in the areas you mentioned today.
Well, I think the focus primarily of the program is on the transportation of cargo, but I do know that there is significant work going on with respect to propulsion systems and low-carbon systems for cruise ships as well. Obviously, we need to get to the point in a net zero future where all of these ships are utilizing fuels that are consistent with that. In the short term, some of those things can include biofuels, and in the longer terms, it may be hydrogen or electric or a range of other things. So I think we are focused on all of the elements of maritime shipping, and Duncan may want to just correct me on this, but I think the focus of this particular program is largely on cargo. Et en français. Oui, c'est important que nous avons un plan qui inclut tous les grands bateaux, pas seulement les bateaux qui transportent les marchandises. Et bien sûr, nous devons avoir les solutions, mais ce programme, le programme les corridors maritimes verts, c'est le focus, c'est seulement avec les bateaux qui transportent le marchandise. Mais bien sûr, on doit combattre le changement climatique, on doit atteindre le niveau de net zéro à 2050, on doit avoir les solutions pour tous les grands bateaux et les petits bateaux aussi.
Follow-up. You also announced today this new supply chain office. Considering the recent labor dispute, what kind of things do you want to change related to the supply chain, and that's things that we experienced in the last month due to this labor dispute? In French and English, please.
So the supply chain office is going to have a much broader focus than simply labor issues, although those obviously are significant. But it's about bottlenecks throughout the system and how do we actually address those. It's about some of the disruptions that we saw during COVID and how can we actually more thoughtfully think about how we prevent the kinds of long-term supply chain disruptions that we have recently experienced. Of course, we are concerned to try to ensure that there is thought and conversation about how we ensure a peaceful nature with respect to labor relations at the ports. Nobody, including the workers at the ports, likes to see those kinds of disruptions, and certainly folks who export products don't as well. So Mr. Dick has a big job, but it is critically important. We expect to see significant growth in exports going forward, and some of it very much related to the development of a clean economy. And so we want to ensure that we are in a position to be able to actually send those goods to the world. C'est important que les chaînes d'approvisionnement sont très forts. On doit assurer qu'on a la capacité d'exporter les marchandises, particulièrement les marchandises comme l'hydrogène, les minéraux critiques, les autres choses, les véhicules électriques et les autres choses qui sont très importantes pour atteindre le niveau de net zéro à 2050. Et M. Dick, il doit travailler très fort pour assurer que nous avons la capacité, mais nous considérons comment on peut avoir un système qui est très fort et comment est-ce qu'on dit, qui peut marcher dans tous les temps, et bien sûr le grève qui était ici il y a 2 ans, 2 mois ou quelque chose comme ça, c'est quelque chose que bien sûr il doit considérer dans le nouveau travail. OK?
Any more questions? No? Well, that concludes our today's announcement. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.